that grew up in the 1970s, the 1980s, the 1990s, up till the 2000s, slate was a very familiar writing material. In Nigeria, across Africa, and different parts of the world, slate was very popular among pupils in elementary schools and even secondary schools. In Ibadan, another part of the southwest, it was known as slate. Slate is made from rock material and it has a frame, a wooden frame, that prevents it from breaking off. Over the years, due to advancement in technology, slate has been phased out of circulation, and there have been invention of new writing materials. But guess what? In 2021, slate may stage a comeback in Oyo State, and it will be coming into the life of pupils in elementary schools in a state that set the pace in Nigeria. In case you wonder how that is going to be possible, just stay with me. I'll be right back. Last week, the Nigerian Union of Teachers in Oyo State confirmed that examination questions were written on the chalkboard for pupils in schools across the state. According to the NUT, the questions were written on the chalkboard as a means of protesting the failure of the Oyo State government to provide running grants for schools in the state. Because the state has failed to provide running grants, the teachers said they had to protest by writing exam questions on the chalkboard, otherwise known as the Blackboard. The Oyo State government has not come out to comment on this development officially, but there were reports over the week that the governor made a reference to the development in a broadcast. According to those reports, the governor said that the state has refused to release grants for schools because the schools have failed to give accounts of the grants they received in the past. Quite interesting. But the question on the lips of many in Oyo State and outside of the state is, should the pupils be the ones to bear the consequences of the government's failure to ensure checks and accountability in schools? Should the government not put in checks and measures in place to ensure that the pupils are not made to suffer or be taken back to the years of the slate? Should the government not hold teachers that are found wanting accountable and make them pay for it rather than allow the students go through the archaic means of writing exams on the chalkboard? There are so many questions that are begging for answers in our state. As things stand today in our state, it is still unclear whether the government and the teachers would reach a compromise as soon as possible. What we know for sure is that the teachers are saying that they will protest the failure of the government to provide grants by writing with whatever it is they can find around. Interestingly, the Oyo State government came into power on the strength of its vision for the education sector in Oyo State.
As the son of civil servants, I owe what I am today to the quality of public education I received at St. Michael's Primary School, Bishop Phillips Academy, and the University of Lagos. Today, our public schools in Oyo State are in a state of disrepair and dysfunction. As governor, one of the things our administration will do is commit 10% of our yearly budget to fund education in our first year, increasing annually to meet UNESCO's recommended 15 to 20%. I have shown commitment to education as a private citizen by providing yearly bursaries and scholarships to indigent students, renovating and equipping learning facilities in public schools in our state. Our strategic solution will place Oyo State's public education system among the top 5 in Nigeria through the provision of qualitative education at all levels, and also ensure The welfare of teachers and support staff will be taken care of adequately. Obi Tuntun, Igba Otun. God bless Oyo State.
Now, to be fair to the governor, he has done quite commendably well for teachers and other civil servants in the state. There are reports of teachers commending the governor for paying their salaries as of when due and paying other bonuses and allowances as appropriate. But the question remains that should other measures that would ensure that the pupils too do not go through the archaic means of writing exams on the chalkboard not be put in place? So many questions, very few answers. In the meantime, it is still unclear whether the government and the teachers will reach a compromise. But we're hopeful that the teachers would not go ahead with their protest and even invent newer means of protesting the failure of the government to provide running grants. Because apparently, if teachers can decide to write exam questions on the chalkboard, it will cost them nothing to invent the slate years. All you need to do is just tell pupils to come to school with slate, and we're back to the 19th century. Hopefully, the government of Oyo State and the teachers in Oyo State will ensure that this is put in check. But then, if the NUT and the Oyo State government successfully reinvent the slate years and pupils are allowed or are compelled to bring slate to schools as we did in those days, it will not be a surprise. After all, this is Nigeria and anything can happen. Nigeria know they carry last. Last week I was in Ibadan and it was a beautiful scenery at the Total Garden roundabout and the Secretariat Underbridge roundabout. If you're driving all the way from Adeoyo down to Total Garden roundabout, there are Christmas lights stationed around that roundabout at the fountain, and it was so beautiful in the night. The same was the situation at the Secretariat roundabout. Beautiful Christmas lights, customized with inscriptions of the Oyo State government, and it was so beautiful in the night. I had to park my car and take some good pictures and some videos because it was so beautiful, and in the spirit of the season, it is something quite commendable. Although if you're driving all the way from Ojaba and all those and Bere down to Yemetu, down to Total Garden, there are very few street lights and there is darkness. Of course, if you're driving from Oshitokun down to Awolowo, down to the Secretariat, there is darkness too. But of course, at the Secretariat Underbridge, the Christmas light was so beautiful, and it's something quite commendable. And we say kudos to the Oyo State government for beautifying that part of the city. Interestingly, we would have loved to know the cost implication of this project, especially for citizens of, for residents of Oyo State who might have to pay for it, whether directly or indirectly. But in the absence of that, the Christmas light is so beautiful, and it's something quite commendable. Away from street light, something very interesting and important is happening in Oyo State, and it is important that we mention this. The city of Ibadan, the capital city of Oyo State, is getting chaotic every single day. In recent time, there have been complaints by virtually every resident of the city that the traffic situation in the state is getting messier by the day. From Oje down to Ojaba, down to Bodija, to Oluyole, to Yemetu, to Adeoyo, to Bere, to Oritakperi, Oluyole, and all the way down to Moniya and Iwo Road. It's a complete mess moving around the city of Ibadan in recent time. It is almost as though everyone has no respect for traffic rules and regulation. There are no traffic lights in most places. Central to the traffic congestion that we have in the city is the massive street trading that we now see on major roads in the States. It is almost as though nobody controls who sells what on our roads in Ibadan. And people just put their wares on the road, causing traffic congestion and making road users go through hell. It was a very chaotic thing over the weekend as I drove past Bodija all the way to UI down to Oyo. It was a complete mess. Of course, it is important that we acknowledge that the road construction works going on at different junctions and at different roundabouts in the state might have contributed to the traffic situation in the state. But it is not enough justification for the mess that we now see on our roads in Ibadan. Last week, I was driving to Elele from Songo, and for those who ply the road, Elele to Songo is a 2-lane road, and it's, relatively spacious. If you're going to Elele from Songo, you go by the right, and if you're coming from Elele down to Songo, you come by the left. But on Saturday, I was driving to Elele, and on our way, some Okada riders busted out from nowhere, and Keke Marwa riders accompanying them, and they literally took over the road that is meant for those of us going to Elele. We had to park our cars so that the Okada riders and the Keke Marwa riders would have their way. It was a complete mess. And they got to the junction at Songo, and nobody held them account for what they must have done to road users that were going on their own. It's as though everybody is a law unto himself in Oyo State today. Nobody respects sanity. Nobody respects rule and regulations. Nobody respects traffic rules. There are no traffic lights in most junctions across the city. There are no traffic officers controlling traffic. In places where there are traffic officers, they are so overwhelmed that there is no impact. So it's a complete mess. And it is very important that your state government come into action and ensure that this situation is put under control. Economic blueprints and developmental initiatives would not fly under an atmosphere of chaos and indiscipline. The level of indiscipline in our state today is beyond despicable. Yes, calling on the state government to come into the picture to ensure that the situation is put under control. The level of indiscipline in our state today is very, very serious. And no society develops under an atmosphere of chaos and indiscipline. When people have no regard for public institutions or public sanity or sanity in the public space, then chaos and anarchy is what that society is inviting upon itself. And that is what the government should be. Hopefully the state government will come into the picture and arrest the situation as soon as possible. Thank you for being a part of the show today. Join me next time on this same platform on Frank Talk with Oladende. Bye-bye.